Good Thursday evening. Thank you for joining us here on the Weather Junkies. I'm Tyler Jankowski, joining the show from Plattsburgh, New York, alongside Dakota Smith, who just barely got in from snowboarding, I hear.
Yeah, hey Tyler, hey everyone. Yeah, my friend, high school friends out here visiting, and we decided to take the day and go snowboarding, and hit some traffic on the way back. We left at 3, and normally it's like an hour and a half drive, and yeah, just barely made it. So, but glad to be here. Beautiful day in Colorado, sunny skies, 50 degrees this weekend. It's going to be in the 60s and sunny. So I don't have much to complain about out here. It would be nice if we had a little bit of more snow. We're about 10 inches below normal for this time of year. So that's a little concerning when it comes to the fire season, and a potential future summer drought. So, but otherwise, doing pretty good. Tyler, how is the weather in Plattsburgh?
It really is amazing how it usually seems to be opposite, or your weather is our next weather, but it makes sense. We've kind of been up and down. I think a lot of people are going to be sick here probably in a couple of weeks, but we had crazy warmth. We hit 72 on Saturday, and that set a daily, monthly, and seasonal record for the Burlington area, which goes back to 1884, 133 years of data. So that was a crazy Saturday. And now we're going to have wind chills as low as 20 or 30 below Saturday morning. It's a short-lived little blast of cold, though. It looks like we warm up again next week. So we've kind of seen everything except for a lot of snow in the last couple of weeks. We had that one big storm, but we're still the grass is showing. Most of the snow is gone. So I've kind of enjoyed it. I don't know. I love a good storm, but when it sticks around and it's really cold so long, I kind of get sick of it, I think.
Yeah, I feel you there, especially if it's cloudy out. Cloudy and cold is no fun. Um, Speaking of cloudy and cold, our guest this week is from State College, Pennsylvania, Dr. Jon Nese. A little background on Dr. Jon Nese. He got his bachelor's, master's, and PhD all in meteorology from Penn State. Right now, he's the associate head of the undergrad program in meteorology at Penn State. He's also a senior lecturer. Tyler and I both had several classes from him, and he's a writer and producer for Weather World, also a host. Dr. Nese, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, guys, and thanks for the wonderful introduction, particularly the cloudy and cold part, but I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah, how is the weather in State College right now?
Well, today was cloudy and cold, the way March 2nd is supposed to be, but of course, much of this winter has not been anywhere close to the average. Tyler mentioned the 72 in Burlington on Saturday. State College hit 74 on Friday, setting a record for the highest temperature on record in State College in February. The previous record was 73. So we've been sharing in that warmth here too.
All right, so we have a few tweets in our trending in the Weatherverse segment. We only have two tweets because we want to get right to our main topic tonight. But the first one continues on the subject of the warmth. It's a tweet from the National Weather Service in Burlington with a recap of meteorological winter. Of course, the months of December, January, and February. And in Burlington, it was the second warmest winter on record. And number one was last winter. So the top two winners, the top two warmest in Burlington were the last 2 years, back to back.
Wow. That's something right there.
Yeah, that is impressive. John, I looked at State College. It wasn't quite that high, I think.
Right. I don't think we had the warmest or second warmest winter on record, though. I can tell you, having lived through the last 3 months, it just didn't feel like winter much at all. I have to estimate that 2/3 of the days were above average, and there were just some absurd days when the sun came out. I mean, as you implied in my introduction, State College can be a very cloudy place during the winter, but it just wasn't as cloudy this year because there were so few cold air masses coming across the lakes. I mean, even though the lakes never froze over, we didn't have enough cold air to generate all those lake-induced clouds.
Wow.
I would say some of the most memorable days this winter were actually, and you kind of implied this, Tyler, with this current sort of chill down, these very brief cold outbreaks. It did get intensely cold for short periods of time. And then you would have sort of the trailing 500 millibar trough come overhead. And if the timing was just right, sort of in the middle of the day, we had some intense snow squally days that I've not seen many of. I mean, here in central Pennsylvania, you often get a line of snow squalls with cold fronts. And we did see a couple of those, but this year it was the trailing cold pocket aloft that really generated some amazing squalls in State College, literal whiteouts. And I think that might have been the most exciting part of the whole winter.
Wow.
Yeah, there were a lot of accidents. I mean, there's always accidents, but there were some prominent ones. I think 2 of them in one day. One was in the Harrisburg area, and another one was north and west of you. A couple.
Right. That's right, Tyler. I don't remember the exact date, but indeed, in southeast Pennsylvania, southeast of the mountains on one of the interstates, and then, of course, Interstate 80 is notorious, particularly the stretch between, say, Clarion and Clearfield, where you're up above 1,500, even 2,000 feet, and one of those squalls comes in, and then you really just, you need to pull over. I mean, it can be a wall of snow, and that's certainly arguably one of the biggest hazards in Pennsylvania, if you want to get specific. It's the blinding snow squall.
Yeah, it seems like it happens every year.
It does.
Our second tweet is more of a visual tweet, and we don't show images on the podcast, but we'll certainly link to it and share it on Twitter. It's a satellite picture from the University of Wisconsin-Madison Twitter account, and it's a picture of California. I believe it was taken on March 1st, so it was taken yesterday. You can see the mountain snow, but the change is that so much of the landscape is green now in California from all the rain that they've had, and certainly that's been in the news with the potential dam failures. But really cool to see the trees and the vegetation respond like that.
Yeah, I agree. It's beautiful. If you can't see this right now, you're listening, go to theweatherjunkies.com and it'll be up there. One interesting thing here is you can really see the difference in, I guess, climatological zones here. You see how the mountains kind of separate the dry from the moist, because, you know, California, right west of those mountains, it's very, very green, and then go east of there and it's just, you know, all dead, and I guess it's kind of like a dark tan or brown or something. So yeah, beautiful image. I guess it's by NPP Veers. It's a true color image. And another thing you can see is some of the lower cloud decks, stratus decks over the Pacific, which is also pretty cool. Yeah, great find, Tyler.
Now we want to get into the main topic tonight. That's with our guest, Dr. Jon Nese. He is joining us from State College. Before we get into exactly what we want to talk about, the future of meteorological education, we want to get a solid background on you in sort of a timeline from your days as a student to now. So in your own words, can you take us through those years in a couple of minutes, Jon?
So I have to use my own words and not words of other people?
Well, I want to let you lead the way.
Okay, I've already used up 10 of my seconds. Well, fond memories of my undergraduate degree at Penn State many years ago. Was involved in some great research with a faculty member at that time by the name of John Dutton. John suggested I stay on and do my graduate work. We had a great project on chaos and predictability in the days before there was ensemble forecasting. We were looking at the growth of small errors and initial conditions and playing with small models with 3 variables and 10 variables that are now the precursors for the ensemble forecasting of today. So those are very fond memories. After that, I worked a few years on the faculty of Penn State at the satellite campuses. I worked in the Pittsburgh area and then in the Hazleton area. Then had a great opportunity to go to the Franklin Institute Science Museum, where I spent 5 wonderful years as their chief meteorologist. A lot of interactions with folks in the Philadelphia area, NPR, the public broadcasting station in Philly, and the NBC 10 with Hurricane Schwartz. Wrote a book called the Philadelphia Area Weather Book. At that time, had also published an introductory textbook in meteorology, which is now in its 5th edition. Then I got a great opportunity to go to the Weather Channel, where I spent 3 years as their on-air expert in the morning with Marshall Cease and Heather Tesh and Alexandra Steele and Nicole Mitchell. I really enjoyed that. And then a position opened up at Penn State in 2005 to come back and do a lot of teaching and a little bit of television. And I'm having a great time. And we've added some administrative duties to that now as I oversee the undergraduate program. Just having a blast, living the dream.
So, Dr. Nese, what was it about weather that got you hooked? Do you remember that moment when you got hooked?
It wasn't a moment, but it was a set of moments. My father was a baseball coach at the local high school, and when you're 9 years old and your dad lets you keep score in the dugout and hang out with the high school kids, the last thing you want to happen is a rainout. So I would sit in front of the television, which at that time, guys, there were no remotes. So you're literally turning a dial. And I would wear out the dial, changing channels from channel 4 to channel 2 to channel 11, the 3 big Pittsburgh stations, looking for tomorrow's forecast. So that was kind of what hooked me. Folks like Joe DiNardo, Dick Mancini, Bob Kudzma, these were the big names in television meteorology at the time when I was in elementary school. And that really hooked me.
So tonight we're talking about educating the future generation of meteorologists, and I think you've already, done a good bit of work here, because there are so many meteorologists that come into Penn State that the first official weather class they take is the introduction meteorology class called Meteo 201. One thing I really love that you do in that class is you dispel folklore that exists in weather, and usually it's not correct. What kind of inspired you to kind of target those things? One example for people listening, one example is that clouds act as a blanket, and you explained why it's not a blanket for heat. So what kind of, I guess, inspired you to take on some weather folklore in that class?
Well, let's make a distinction here that I guess I wouldn't so much classify that as a folklore, because I would classify it as sort of a misleading explanation. Folklores, and maybe we're mincing words here, but I like to think of folklores as sort of the generalizations that folks back when there was no real science of meteorology kind of depended on, and a lot of them have still work, and a lot of them are not so good. But yeah, I guess that's a really good question, Dakota. Why am I so interested? I guess watching television as much as I did, particularly television weather. Let's be honest. Even though local television, and Tyler, you're in local television, and you certainly know this to be true. Even though there are signs that folks are losing some interest, perhaps in local television, those who do watch trust the meteorologist, and they often watch just to get the weather. And so when you're on television and you're a weathercaster, there's a great deal of responsibility there to get it right. And so I guess as an educator, when you want to help folks understand the way your science works, you just want to do it right. And the particular example you cite there about clouds, why are cloudy nights warmer than clear nights? And the simple explanation, because you only have 5 seconds on TV, is that clouds act like a blanket. Well, I think it's kind of fun to make students think about, is that really the way it works? So let's talk about how blankets work. And then let's talk about how clouds work. And I think that can be a great educational tool to to take something you think you know, to talk about it at a deeper level, and find out that maybe you didn't really know it at all.
Yeah, I'll never forget that example. That's the first time I heard someone explain it like that, and yep, it's in my memory forever.
The one thing that I certainly got out of that was I'm so careful with my words, and I always want to make sure that what I'm saying is scientifically accurate. Because as we all know, it's so easy to not be that way. And there are so many examples.
Yeah, I mean, that's admirable, and it's also very difficult because as all of your listeners probably know, but not everyone in the general public knows, when you're doing a television weathercast, you are essentially ad-libbing. The folks who sit at the desk and report the news or read the news are reading usually a teleprompter, but you're not. And so it's challenging to get it right. It takes a lot of training, and it takes a dedication to sticking to the facts.
So, your role as associate head of undergraduate programs at Penn State came about in the last couple years. Can you talk a little bit about what that entails and your interest in having more of an administrative role in addition to teaching and television?
Sure. That was not something I ever anticipated I would be doing, but the role entails everything from deciding which faculty members teach which classes to trying to recruit students to get the word out about our program, to meeting with those students when they visit campus. So it's really anything that has to do with the undergraduate program, trying to come up with unique ways to get the word out. I mean, let's face it, you guys know this as well as I do. When folks hear about a meteorology program, instantly, most people think, well, they forecast the weather. Or there's the most common question asked of a meteorology student: which television station do you want to work for when you graduate? And of course, as you guys know, and Tyler in particular, the percentage of students who go through an atmospheric science program and end up on TV is rather small at most universities. And I think one of the challenges we face is getting the public and prospective students to understand that atmospheric scientists can do so much more with their degree.
So what kind of a part of that, what are some of the supplemental things that students are now doing in conjunction with their meteorology degree? Because it seems like more and more just a meteorology degree isn't going to cut it for your dream job. You have to have some sort of skill set that complements that. So what are some of the things that your program and other programs are doing to supplement that?
Yeah, that's a great description. And I kind of think of it, I'm a big sports fan, particularly basketball, and I kind of think of it as you have to have, those of you who watch basketball know that sometimes you make a shot and you get fouled, so you get to go to the foul line and try to get another point. And in the verbiage of basketball announcers, that's called and one. And as a meteorology student, you really do need an and one. What's that special sauce that you bring that brings your skill set to another level? And as a way to continue answering that question, a couple of years ago, I was on the Weather Channel's Weather Geeks program talking about this very subject. And so I did sort of an informal analysis of the job titles of our recent graduates. And it was very interesting to me. Meteorologist was the most common word in those job titles. But the second most common word was analyst. Analyst. Companies are hiring meteorologists recognizing that, think about all the skills that your classes and your out-of-class experiences may have brought to you. The ability to recognize patterns, the ability to take large data sets and extract information from them, the idea of being able to analyze using statistics or writing computer programs. These skills are very valued by employers. And so that can be your and one. Maybe it's a little bit more statistics. Maybe you become an excellent programmer. Guys, we've had students in recent years develop apps and get hired by companies to develop apps. One of the sort of options we have at Penn State is called weather risk management, where we're kind of combining meteorology with a little bit of business and finance. And we're learning that that's a particularly compelling combination for some employers as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with that. And shucks, we haven't even talked about the sort of the chemistry or environmental part of this, where you might want to get into environmental consulting, air quality. Maybe you want to double up and get a geography minor. Oh, the opportunities really are considerable of what you can build around a degree in atmospheric science.
Do you see any sort of pattern on you briefly mentioned analyst and using statistics, and is there any sort of pattern that you see for the future that what a job as with a meteorology degree is going to be? What's happening more and more, and what kind of jobs are opening up more and more?
I wouldn't say that I see a distinct pattern. What I do see, let's face it, the computer models are getting pretty darn good at forecasting the weather. So if you get into this business thinking that I just want to forecast, I want to forecast the weather. Well, you better be really, really good at it to prove your worth beyond the computer models. Or alternatively, or in addition, you better be really, really good at communicating the information, sort of holding the hand of decision makers and helping them with their decision making when it is weather related. So building those communication skills, and of course, folks might think, oh, he's talking about television, but not really. It doesn't have to be that. It can be behind the scenes working with clients who have weather sensitive industries. So I guess in a somewhat lengthy answer, but building those communication skills. And the second thought that came to mind, boy, if you come out of the university with a background in meteorology and you can program, I mean, the world is your oyster. I mean, we take that very seriously at Penn State. We now have a third course that students who are really interested in programming can take, a course in scientific database management. So where you're learning how to manipulate large data sets and many data sets at the same time. And think about all the data we're faced with every day. I mean, geez, when I was in school, we were happy to have a megabyte of storage on our PC, right? And now you can buy 4 terabytes for $200 of extra storage. And with a satellite like GOES 16, I mean, we're not far from exabytes, really, when you think about it, 10 to the 18th.
So what do you see as the greatest challenge? There's so many meteorology schools nowadays. How do you stand out? And I know Penn State absolutely stands out, but how do you maintain that competitive edge going forward?
Well, that's a good question. I think you continue to have a faculty that is the best or one of the best in the business, because it starts with faculty members who know their stuff in their sub-disciplines. And we try to have a faculty that has a lot of different strengths. At Penn State, we have experts in tropical, mesoscale, air quality, air chemistry, weather risk. I'm sure I'll insult somebody by forgetting atmospheric physics, cloud physics, numerical modeling, shucks, I haven't even mentioned weather communications, and here's somebody, Tyler, who specializes in weather communications. So sure that you keep being good at your long-term strengths, which have always been forecasting and communications at Penn State, and you make the commitment to hire the best faculty you can in various subdisciplines. And then part of my job is to continue to attract tremendous students like you two guys were to come and to make us better, because you need the students who are going to push you. And I'm sure you guys, when you were at Penn State, Tyler, were you involved with the creation of any of the new clubs? Were you part of the first Storm Chase Club? Was that your year?
I was not part of the Storm Chase Club, but I was sort of on the front edge of the social media and the live stuff with Campus Weather Service.
That's right. So we need the best students to come in and say to us, look, what you guys are doing is good, but it can be better. And certainly that's a very good example. So the combination of great faculty, great students, and I think we have a pretty nice facility up on the 6th floor of Walker Building where students can go. And at a big university, sometimes you just need to go to a smaller place where you can sit down and have lunch, watch a little TV, relax on the couch, do your homework, look at the weather. And we have a facility like that, which I really think makes the big school environment of Penn State it gives you that small school feel.
Facility and town. You can't beat the town.
Well, we're biased. I know there are a lot of nice college towns.
We are very biased.
Let's be honest, but I would say that State College is a great environment to be in. And let's be honest. In the community of State College, you have a National Weather Service office, which is fantastic. I mean, right out the road, you have the National Weather Service, and then if you go in the other direction, you've got the world's largest private forecasting firm, AccuWeather. So I've never done the statistics, but I've always thought that you would be hard pressed to find another community in the United States that has more atmospheric scientists per capita than State College, Pennsylvania. And when you have that much talent in a particular field, great things can happen.
One criticism that programs get nowadays is revolving around a weakness in climate education or climate change education. How have some of the required courses changed in that regard, or will be changing in the future as it relates to climate science?
Sure. So we have one required course that focuses on climate. It's called Climate Dynamics. It's required of all students to get the degree. I mean, arguably, and I've seen arguments both ways, another climate course, I'm not personally in favor of requiring a second climate-related course, but you can certainly get one at Penn State, and you don't have to stay within the meteorology program. Our geography and geosciences programs, which are in the same cluster of majors as meteorology in the so-called College of Earth and Mineral Sciences, they offer additional climate-related courses for a student who wants to go that route. And your question sets me up beautifully to make what I think is another important point. There's a lot of flexibility in the meteorology and atmospheric science program at Penn State. In one of the particular options or tracks that you can take, you can choose as many as 7 professional electives, that is 7 upper division courses that turn the degree into what you want it to be. So, and I think there's a lot of beauty in that flexibility. And we really do try to make it easy for a student who has interests that may not align with one of our options. We try to make it easy for them to sort of create their own flavor of atmospheric science.
I was reading a piece by Dr. Marshall Shepard in Forbes, and he suggested that maybe we need a different degree for people who cover and do research on and talk about climate. Do you see that happening in the future?
Well, at the undergraduate level, there are probably programs like that already exist that I may not be aware of. I can tell you that at the graduate level at Penn State, we're currently in the process of creating with, I believe it's the Department of Geoscience, sort of a dual title graduate degree with a climate focus. So I think you've kind of hit a nerve there. I think some universities, and I'm not privy to what's going on at other universities, but I can tell you that whether you know it or not, Dakota, you've kind of hit upon something that's in the works at Penn State in terms of a graduate degree.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Tyler, did you have a follow-up here?
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot here in the last about 30 minutes. Jon, do you think there's anything major that we've missed in terms of the future of meteorology education that you might want to talk about?
No, wait a minute. I thought we were supposed to be talking about sports.
Well, I'd love to talk about sports, but I keep...
That comes afterward.
It's not baseball season yet, though.
I have to limit myself.
Yeah. It is an interesting time of the year, isn't it, with
Yeah.
baseball getting started down there in Florida and the South
Hockey.
and March Madness. But okay, so what was your question? The future.
Yeah, any big points
educating.
that maybe you're passionate about that maybe we didn't cover?
I think we've covered pretty much everything that was on my mind. I keep coming back to the ability to code. I mean, the fire hose of data that comes our way every day is just overwhelming. From research projects, from satellites, from radar. I mean, if you come out of the university with the ability to write some code, I really do think that opens up avenues that you may not even have thought existed. Certainly, the opportunity to go to graduate school, if you can walk into a graduate program and say, hey, yeah, I know how to code. Python, just you name the language. And to some respects, I don't think it matters anymore. It's just that if you know how to work with large data sets, you become certainly a hotter commodity. And I do think, I mean, certainly the television industry fluctuates in terms of hiring, but I really do think there are opportunities. And I know the television business is tough. I mean, Tyler, I'm sure you could tell stories about your experiences over the last couple years. And I've had enough jobs in television to know that it can be a tough business to work in. But by golly, I think if you're a competent atmospheric scientist with decent communication skills who can get in front of a large group of people, or, well, of course, effectively that's what you're doing when you're on camera. You just can't see the people. And explain science in an interesting but accurate way, I think there's a niche for you. And so I really do love it when I see some of our students, as much as I know how difficult the television industry can be, hours, maybe pay in your first couple years. I love the idea of seeing our students going out into the job market and becoming some of those people who talk about the weather to a large number of people and do it in an elegant, yet interesting way.
Dr. Nese, we usually ask our guest the last question, and that is, what type of advice would you give to students in meteorology? But I'm pretty sure we already covered that. I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to thank you for the service that you do for meteorology students that go through your program. Besides my mom and my dad, I think I learned more from you than any other person. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for everything you do.
You're too kind. Thank you very much, Dakota, and thank you, Tyler, for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
So just to plug our sites here, if you don't follow us on Twitter, we're at the WX Junkies. You can find us on Facebook. You can listen to this podcast on iTunes or theweatherjunkies.com. If you're over on iTunes, give us a rating or review, please. Tyler, we have a crazy month coming up. Tons of great guests. Who can we expect next week?
Next week, we have the director of the National Weather Service on, Dr. Louis Uccellini. And we're very excited about that. And March, if you didn't know, is also National Weather Podcast Month. So we have the whole slate of guests lined up for not just next week, but the rest of the month. And if you check out our Twitter account at the WX Junkies, we have everyone listed there, a couple of groups coming on. And the schedule is all the way out through March 30th. So for Jon, Dakota, and myself, thank you for tuning in to this week. We certainly hope that you will join us right back here next week.